Oral History Recording with Jim Armstrong. The interviewer is Lorna Jean Hagstrom, who is a friend. Today is September the 15th, 2016. The interview is being recorded at the DeLand House Museum. We'll begin by asking, where were you born?
I was born here in DeLand. Lived here all my life.
And were you an only child?
No, I had two sisters and a brother.
And where did you fit into the birth order?
I was the baby.
Oh. How did your family happen to come to DeLand?
Well, my father was in the sawmill business. And so back then they didn't replant the trees. They just cut them all down and we moved on somewhere else. So I remember my mother, I was born here in DeLand, but the rest of them came later, not later, but they were already born. But they used to follow the timber, and so I remember my mother used to say, I never could get it straight, and it was either they moved 16 times in 18 years or 18 times in 16 years. Now a lot of the places where it was just a house down the street or something different. They went to about 6 or 8 towns,
Where did they come here from?
They came from Mom and Daddy. Both were from Alabama, North Alabama.
What are some of the things you remember about growing up in DeLand? Well,
it was one thing. I remember the town didn't have as many people in it. When I was a kid, there was probably 2,000, 3,000, something like that, where there's 28,000 now, I think, And nothing's changed. Downtown didn't change too much. It's just got the same buildings, but they've gotten, over the years, there's changed a lot of hands, the same one that don't, work in the same place anymore. Like, I remember the Fountains men's store is where the Lucid Grape is now. And then Frierson's on the Boulevard, which was a filling station and a appliance store, it's where the bank is now. I can't think of the name of the bank there, but it's I don't know where it is. I know where it is. I just can't think of the streets it was on. And there's a lot of others that I can't remember, but there was probably 15 or 20 different stores that they're not the same. The store's the same, but the people aren't there that originally opened them.
Was the Frierson's at where Bank of America is now?
Yeah. I couldn't think of it.
Did you have any unusual experiences as a child? You said you took a ride in an ambulance?
Oh, yeah. When I was about 9 or 10 years old, I had a hernia operation. And that's when the hospital was just where, not Earl Brown Park, but where up there on Stone Street. And we lived in the same house then. That's about 2 blocks away from where the hospital is now. And so when I had the operation, I was in the hospital for 4 or 5 days. Back then, you stayed in a lot longer than you do nowadays. But then I told my dad, I said, I want to go home in the ambulance. And he would say, well, it's not but 2 blocks. I can probably carry you that far, But yeah, I said, no, I want to go ride in an ambulance. So he said he'd get a hold of Clyde Langford. Back then, Clyde he worked for Summerhills before he opened his own funeral home. So Daddy got a hold of Clyde and he said, yeah, he'd do it. So they carried me down and put me in the ambulance. And we started going down. We went over to New York Avenue and turned around and came back and started to head to my house. I said, can we go a little bit longer? That's not very long. It wasn't but about 2 minutes, He said, yeah, we'll go as long as you want. So we turned around and went all the way down to the boulevard and then went up the boulevard to Plymouth. And while I was in there, I was in the back and knew a lot of people, and I'd see people and I'd wave at them like this out of the windows of the ambulance. And we were gone for probably 25 or 30 minutes. And we finally, Clyde said, well, I do have to go back to work sometimes, So we went back by my house and got out there, and that was it. But I've always remembered that riding in that ambulance.
So the funeral homes had the ambulances in those days? Mm-hmm. Were there any other funeral homes besides Summerhills?
No,
that was the only one. What where did you go to school, and where did you go to church?
I went to school here, of course, in DeLand, and I went and got my education from church and the school, both in the same place. The school, the church I still go to now, Trinity Methodist Church on the corner of Wisconsin and Clara. And then, but I went and started kindergarten in the Dempsey Brewster School, which it's part of the school board's buildings now. And I was there from kindergarten to the 6th grade. And then you finished 6th grade, you moved over to the other building, which is the other buildings across the field. Well, now it's a parking lot, but it used to be across a sandy field that you walked over to get to that school. And it faced Rich. It's still there. And was there from the 7th grade to the 9th grade. And then after that, you went into the high school where it's burnt down, but it was on the corner of Clara and Rich, yeah. And then, of course, the church is still there, too. So that's where I went. My school, the whole 12 years, was right in that one square block area.
What subjects did you particularly enjoy in school?
None, really. Yeah. I wasn't too smart. I was smart. I was lazy, and I was having a good time playing and talking and stuff and going to school. But I went to school. I got fairly good grades. But so some of the teachers, they didn't like me. That's what you get, that impression when you don't do too well in school. I remember one time with one teacher, her name was Ms. Short, and she was about 6 feet tall. I always remembered that. And so I was taking math of some sort. I can't remember what it was. And so she told people one day she told the people that we could go up to the blackboard and work the problems and so forth. Well, I didn't know how to work the problem, but I thought, well, I'd go up to the blackboard. So I went up to the blackboard, and she said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "You're supposed to be teaching me how to do this problem." So she said, "We can't do that. You're going to have to go down to the principal's office." So I had to stay down there for the rest of that week.
And how did they punish students back in those days?
Well, now, they had what they call the rubber tube. Now, I never got that. I don't know why I missed it, but my real good friend of mine, he got it all the time. I won't mention any names, but people, I might later on. But they had the rubber tube. It was a tube not a hose size, wasn't that big, but it was about like not that big. Mm-hmm. And it was about that long. And Ms. Brewster, who was the principal over there, she'd curl that thing up. And of course, we wore short pants too a lot of times to school. I learned to start wearing long pants though then. But yeah, she'd turn that thing and she'd hit you in the leg, and you were jumping to keep from. That sounds cruel, but they should do that to all these kids nowadays, I think.
What were there any activities or clubs that you belonged to? Yeah,
I was in the Key Club, which was a service club. Then I was in the what else? I can't remember. Oh, I was in the. I didn't play football too much because my brother played football ahead of me about 4 or 5 years, and he was really good. And so every time I'd be whatever I was doing, I'd miss the ball or something. They'd say, "Well, Fulmer," my brother's name was Fulmer. He said, "Well, Fulmer didn't do that." So I finally got tired of trying to do what my brother did, so I quit doing that. But I was in the FFA, and of course I said the Key Club, and I can't think what else. I was in quite a few things. Bible Club.
Oh, Bible! They had Bible Club back in those days.
Yeah.
Did you?
Like I really deserved the Bible Club,
When you were in FFA, did you raise any animals?
Not any animals, but we had gardens we had to raise. I dug in our yard. I dug it up and planted carrots and things like that. But I had animals, but they were my own private pets,
What about history? Did you enjoy history?
Yes, I enjoyed it. I didn't appreciate it, though, till I got my first trip over to Europe later on. I got to go to Venice. I always wanted to go to Venice and stuff. So when we got there and I saw it, and I thought, this is wonderful. I've always wanted to be there, and here I am,
Did you go to college? And
Yes, I went to two different colleges. I went to a junior college up in North Georgia, Young Harris Junior College. Then after that, I came back. It was a 2-year, and then after that, I came back and went to Florida Southern College over in Lakeland. I didn't want to go to the big schools like University of Florida or anything like that. I just wanted like the small, the one over there in Lakeland is about the same size as Stetson is.
And what did you major in?
In business and art.
And did you serve in the military?
Yep, I was drafted. That's what back in the days when they drafted. They drove me crazy. I knew I was going to have to go in, and I kept getting notes from the draftee person, whatever the woman's name, I can't remember her name. And I had to finally get where she wouldn't bother me anymore. She bothered me the whole year before I had to even go in. So I can't remember her name now, but she finally quit bothering me. And then I was stationed in outside of Baltimore, Maryland, the Army Chemical Center. And the only thing there was since I had majored in art and so forth, they had put me into working the movie projectors, which it wasn't my thing to do myself. And one time we would have to take turns running the movie projectors when dignitaries from Washington would come to see some kind of movie about something. And I remember one day, Robert McNamara, I think he was something with the Army, Secretary of Army, I think, when he was. And so he was in the audience. There was about, I guess, 50 or 60 people in the audience. And I got engrossed in looking at the movie, and pretty soon I heard a noise, and I looked, and it was all going off the reel down on the floor around my feet, So I had to tell him what I had to do, and it's kind of embarrassing having the Secretary of the Army, couldn't he work this projector, But that's about the only thing that happened to me in the Army.
And what did you do after you got out of the service?
Well, when I came back to DeLand, and I started working got a job, got more than one of these, they call hunters, where they give them money and they find a position for you. Well, I did that and went to Brunswick, Georgia, up that area, so I got a job there. But they lost Thicol was the name of the company, but they lost their contractor, whatever. So since I was the last one hired, I was the first one let off, So I wasn't there but about 4 months, I guess. And then I came back to DeLand again, and then I got a job in Orlando, and that was before I-4 and all the traffic. It wasn't that bad back then, but I worked down there for about seven or 8 years. And then they sold the business, and so I decided to come back up to DeLand. And I didn't know what to do, so I decided, well, I have to try banking. Maybe I like banking. So I went to this person that was the president of the bank, and I knew him and stuff. And I told him I'd gotten some money they give money they give you when you leave employment. So I had that money I could live on. So I told him I said, how would you like for me to not work for any money, just work for free? And he said, well, we can't do that. Yeah, so he said he'd go talk to the board and everything, and they went and talked to him. So they were going to have to hire an auditor. And so he said, can you do auditing work? I said, I don't know, I can learn how to do it. So I did that for 2 or 3 years, and then I gradually worked myself up in the bank. I ended up as a vice president when I retired. And I retired in it's been so long ago, 1998.
Which bank was that?
Well, then it was Florida National. And now, what'd you say it was now?
Well, I think now it's Wells Fargo, but it's
No, it's not that. Yeah, I guess it is. Because I went through the two different banks. I wasn't working when it became Wells Fargo.
It became First Union after Florida Bank. Is that you worked for First Union?
Yeah. And then it was another bank.
And then it was Wachovia.
Yeah, so you know more about it than I do. Yeah.
Well, you were retired. After retirement, what did you do?
Well, right after the retirement, I decided, well, I want to do something just for a little while, that just a part-time job. So I got a job in a flower shop, delivering flowers.
Which shop was that?
It was Curry the Florist. That's not here anymore either. Mm-hmm. And so I started doing that, and I delivered flowers. And the one job I had to do in there was water the plants in the pots and stuff inside the store. And I couldn't tell the difference between a silk plant and a live plant, so I watered them all, And he said, well, you shouldn't do that. The boss said you shouldn't do that. So I can't tell the difference. So he said, you can do it. I said, so what I started doing that, I would go stick my finger in the pot, if it was sand in there. I know that was real live things. That's what I did. So that was my one other thing. And then another thing I did when I was working there was, when we got tips, we had to put them in a not a jar, but something where everybody put their money in the same thing. And what we had to do was, if you went to deliver flowers and the person wasn't home, you had to bring them back and deliver them the next day. Well, I was finished, hadn't delivered anything. I was finished working and stuff, and I heard them talking about delivering flowers to this woman out in Glenwood, and I knew who it was. And they kept saying, well, she didn't answer the door or anything. And I said, well, I know her. I'll go see her tomorrow. So I went and took the flowers the next day. And she when I would deliver flowers to people I knew, that, a lot of times they'd tell me to go, well, come in and have a cup of coffee and stuff. So I went in there, and she was wrapping or making her Christmas cards out and putting money in it. And she thought I was bringing the flowers to her. But she had a sister. She had two sisters. She lived with three of them. And I was bringing it to all of them, but she couldn't get it in her mind that I was wasn't bringing it to her. She thought I was bringing it to her. So when I got ready to leave, she gave me a Christmas card. I said, thank you. And we were supposed to share the tips when you got back to the shop. And I opened that card up, and there was a $100 bill in there. I said, well, I ain't going to get all this money to all those people that wouldn't even deliver it to her. So I didn't say anything. I talked to the boss. He said, go ahead and keep it. I won't tell him you got it and stuff. So I did get a big tip.
What inventions were outstanding when you were growing up that you remember? We don't have nowadays.
Well, we don't have.
We do have.
Yeah. Because the TV was the big thing back then. I remember when we first got our TV, TV said it was back in the middle 50s, early 50s. I can't remember the dates and stuff, but I remember I turned it on and looked at the test pattern. So you had to look at it. Nowadays it's on 24 hours, but then it was just on about 4 or 5 hours. That's the main thing I can remember.
What other things have you enjoyed since you've retired? Mm-hmm. Do you travel?
Well, I used to. I haven't traveled much since I retired. What I did was, people said, how can you travel? Every summer I'd go somewhere, to Europe or Mexico, or even went to Iceland one time. And people said, how do you do that? I said, well, I never married, so I didn't have the money that I would have had to spend on my children or wife. I used to travel with. So that's why I like to travel. But since I retired, I don't travel as much as I did then.
What are the places you enjoyed the most?
I like the places that I could understand the language, like England and Alaska and Australia and some of these other places. But the countries that I went to, a lot of countries, but a lot of them I couldn't understand a word they said, But probably my favorite would be Alaska and Australia and New Zealand.
Did you ever do any acting?
Yeah, sort of. I always liked acting. So when I got to the bank, they wanted me to get in with the people in the town and stuff, So I thought, well, I'll try acting. And that was like in 19, or whatever, dates are terrible. But anyhow, I acted till I couldn't remember the lines very much, so I had to get too old to remember, so I hadn't quit yet. I still go sometimes and I used to count the lines that were in a part, That's the first thing I do. They gave me the book, and so I started. Sometimes you'd get 300 or 400 lines, and that's a lot of lines. And I got where it took me forever to remember the lines. So I finally decided after I got this one play that it took me forever, and I messed up it a couple of times, that I'd count the lines first, and if there were over 100, I wouldn't take the part.
What theaters were you involved with?
Well, just one local ones here. Used to be the Shoestring Theater, and then we kind of had a fight, and it split up, and it was still, they went out to
Lake Helen?
Lake Helen, yeah. And I stayed here, and we would act in the theater up at Stetson. We helped build it, didn't build it, but
the Cultural Arts Center.
Yeah, the Cultural Arts Center. And then I did some work down at Athens now. In fact, I think in Athens, what I'm gonna do is, since I started off in my acting career, and when I was about 10 years old, I went down there. They had a talent show, and I went down there and got in the talent show. I didn't win or anything, but that was my first thing on the stage down at Athens. So I thought, when I finally decided to not do any more acting, I'm going to go and tell everybody this is my last performance. And I've still done small parts again, but I don't do anything big.
Do you do things with the Historical Society?
Yeah, in fact, this is where I've gotten some of my acting since way back. Is the Historical Society has a cemetery walk, and I've been in that for about, I don't know how many they've had, but I've been in about 10 or 12 of them at least.
What characters have you played?
Oh, I don't know. I played this one man. I can't even think what his name was. He lived here in town. He was educated. He went to Harvard or Princeton, but he went barefooted down, and he went downtown. How he'd earn his money here in town. He never practiced law, but he would go down to the grocery stores and stuff, and he'd have the grocery stores give them all their old vegetables that were starting to rot and everything else. And he'd take them and go to somebody's house and knock on the door, and they'd come out, and I know that they bought him because they'd had to get rid of him, I'm sure. But I'd have to do that and stuff. And I had barefooted. In fact, I've got a picture of myself in barefooted walking down out in the cemetery.
Based on your own experience, what advice would you give to a young person today?
Well, I think I would tell them to stay in school. That's the main thing, and go as far as you can go. Don't quit in high school. Go on through if you can, and afford it and get scholarships. Go to a college. That's my advice.
And how would you like to be remembered?
Well, I don't know. I'm not quite to that stage yet. I'd like to remember as being happy and friendly, and I don't want to think anything sad about me, and just enjoy life.
Is there anything else that you would like to add that we did not cover?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, thank you.